I'm Pam Scott, executive coach and founder of MentorLoft. We're glad you joined us today. This interview is a part of a series called Leaders Finish Strong. Our purpose is to help CEOs have a successful handoff when they retire. To do that, they need to prepare their next gen leaders to take on new responsibilities and face new challenges. That's what true leaders do. They equip their next gen. Leaders don't fail, leaders finish strong. And that said, I'm so happy to introduce you today to Anthony Fasano. Anthony is president and CEO of the Engineering Management Institute. So Anthony, tell us a little bit about what EMI is and what it does.
Sure, Pam. First of all, thanks for having me on this series. I'm honored to be here. And so the Engineering Management Institute was something that I started back in 2009 because as an engineer myself, I realized that in order to be successful as an engineering professional, you need technical skills plus people and project management skills. And unfortunately, many engineering professionals don't have access to those other skill sets. So through EMI, we help them with that. And really what we help now is we've gotten mostly into helping engineering companies, and we help them by providing solutions to assist them with their hiring and development needs. So essentially, we help them to build learning and development programs. We help them to build career roadmaps for their employees so they can understand the different career pathways. And by doing that, it's easier for them to recruit talent, it's easier for them to develop their people, and it's easier for them to retain them. And that's really what I tell people what we do is we help engineering companies recruit, develop, retain.
Absolutely. And you have an interesting story about how you as an engineer got to this place that you are at now. So would you share that with our viewers?
Yeah, sure. So my background is in civil engineering. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree. And after school, I started working for a small civil engineering consulting company, which was eventually acquired by kind of a mid-sized company. And with this acquisition, I saw that there was a lot of pathways for me to maybe to become a partner in the company one day. And that's something that I knew I wanted to do. And I think a lot of engineering professionals are looking to go that route of ownership, partnership, principal in a company. And so I figured maybe one of the best things to do, I was a big fan of Tony Robbins. I read a lot of his books, and he always talked about modeling successful people. If you see someone that is where you're at, you can kind of like, you don't have to recreate the wheel, so to speak. So I looked at all of these principals and these owners, and I noticed that there was a pattern. And the pattern was that in addition to their technical skills, they did have these other skills, like I mentioned earlier. They had the ability to interact with people. They could manage people effectively. They could manage projects. They could delegate. And so I just decided, you know what, if I want to get to that level, I need to develop all of these skill sets. So essentially, I read a ton of books. I watched a bunch of videos. I took online courses, went to whatever training I could get through my company. And I noticed that my career kind of started to take off because of that. And then one day my boss approached me and said, Anthony, we really love what you're doing. Do you think you could go around to the other offices and teach our other engineering professionals these same skill sets that you've developed? And my immediate answer to that question was absolutely not, because I'm not a trainer, I'm an engineer. So how can I do that? So eventually, with some poking and prodding and just thinking through it myself, I did put together a curriculum, and I did decide to travel around to the other offices and give some of these trainings over lunch and learns. And basically when I did that, Pam, two things happened. Number one, I loved it. I mean, I had so much fun with it, and I really enjoyed helping technical professionals learn some of these skills that we don't learn in school. But I think secondly, and most importantly, the company started seeing results. They started seeing some better interaction between team members, better project performance. And so I made a decision to myself that I wanted to do this more. So I enrolled in an executive coaching school in the evenings. I joined a Toastmasters, and I worked with our HR director at the time, and we built kind of an internal management and leadership coaching program there. And after conducting it for a year, it went really well, but I kind of said to myself, if there's this many people just in one company with these challenges, I would imagine that there are thousands out there beyond. And that's when in 2009, I decided to leave my engineering career and start what is today the Engineering Management Institute. And since then, I've kind of traveled around the country, and I've tried to make it a mission to help engineers become better managers and better leaders.
Terrific. And I'm on board 1,000%. My dad is an engineer. He's 94. we still have communication issues. So that's why I love working with engineers. So in the information that you have online about EMI, I'm going to refer to it that way so I don't mess it up. I really like the fact that you had as your theme that every engineering professional deserves the opportunity to become what you just said, an effective and powerful leader. What, in your experience traveling and talking to engineers in places, what is one of the biggest challenges? What's a hurdle that maybe a mid-level engineer has in trying to become an effective manager and powerful leader?
So good question. I think the biggest hurdle is developing those critical skills, the ability to interact with people, communicate effectively, speak in public, delegate, etc., while trying to also continue to do your technical work. Right? Because engineers are busy. There's a lot of work right now. I work a lot in the civil engineering world. Infrastructure work is all over the place. And, these are billable professionals. So if they take an hour off for training, their company's not getting paid, and that's a problem. So there has to be a balance there. They have to find a way to continue to develop some of those skills, whether it's on their own through reading, again, online courses, whatever their company can give them would be great. And I think the onus is also on the companies right now. We work like pretty much strictly with companies these days, do a lot of corporate learning and development. And I try to emphasize to them that even though your professionals are billable, and taking away time for learning and development is taking away time from your profitable work right now, over the long term, your company is going to be much better off because you're going to have a group of well-rounded engineering professionals that can become very effective leaders. And you need those people to grow your company. So if we're speaking directly to the engineers, I would say that it's kind of up to you to develop these skills in whatever way you can. Like I joined a Toastmasters group, and when in the evenings I develop my speaking skills, right? So there are things that you can do regardless of whether or not your company is going to give you the training you need. And I would try to, push you to do those as much as you can. However, if I'm speaking to the CEOs and the leaders of these companies, you have to understand that by developing these programs, these learning and development programs, people management, people leadership, project management, in the short term, you're going to sacrifice a little bit by having to take some of those people out of work. But in the long term, you're going to grow a stronger organization in terms of leadership skills. And also what it does, like I said earlier, is by building these learning and development programs, you're going to be in the minority of engineering companies because a lot of them haven't taken the time to develop them. And again, that's going to provide you with a recruiting edge, a development edge, and a retention edge. So really, it's in the best interest of the companies to do that as well.
I just love that, because right now here in Georgia, every single company I work with is just slammed and working way harder really than their bosses would want them to work. And so they have to work on that retention and the recruiting and retention part of it. And I know that some of them have found that by having something on their website that says, we have a career development plan for you, we have a path for you, people in the company have gotten more excited about the options. And they're not sitting there as a mid-level engineer going, I guess I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, which is fine for those people who want to do that. But for the people who want to do something different the second half of their career, these programs like you have and the kind of work that we do provides those engineers with an option, and they'll be way more likely to stay if they're doing that.
Yeah, and I think, Pam, just on that point real quick, one thing I just want to reinforce there, because I use this a lot, and you painted the picture really well, is the clarity for your professionals is really important. So the analogy that I use with a lot of the companies we work with is, imagine that your company is a big boat and all of your staff is on it and they're helping the boat go forward.
Right.
If they're going into a fog and they can't see what's ahead, they're unsure of where they're going and what they're doing. And so, like creating these career roadmaps and stuff, which we help companies do, it's just the idea of you're making it more clear for your professionals on what's ahead for them, what options they have. And nobody likes to work in a fog.
No, No, I tend to pull over to the side of the road and
Right,
just
exactly.
pray that the fog will lift. Yeah, and nobody does want to work in a fog. And again, that whole recruiting part of it kicks in too. So one of the things that struck me when I read about the Engineering Management Institute, and I've been doing work with you guys now for over a year, it's been great fun, is a very strong commitment to balance. How do you approach a leader in an engineering firm like some of the ones I know, where their people are working 50 and 60 hours a week right now? That's not the leader's intention, but that's the reality. What can you suggest to help them find some balance in their workload?
So it kind of goes back again to what I was talking about, is that if you don't create the support for these professionals in their careers, okay. Here's another analogy. I use this analogy all the time. In fact, I had a sketch of this done. I'm going to share it on LinkedIn in the near future. But again, if you go back to the boat analogy, if you're a company, you're a big boat, you're going in this ocean. There's a lot of other boats in the ocean too right now, right? And they're all moving pretty fast too. And if all your staff is working hard to keep the boat moving, if you're not keeping them happy, they're going to go jump on another ship, right? And you're not going to be able to get anyone else on your ship unless you have the right things in place, like you mentioned, the career stuff that you can show people. So what's going to happen is they're going to get burnt out from rowing this big boat, and they're going to leave and they're going to find another boat. So you have to make sure that if you just keep piling work onto people and you're not thinking about getting more people in to help them, making sure that everyone on the boat is happy in their careers and they see what's ahead, then eventually what's going to happen is they're going to leave the boat and you're going to be in more trouble than you are now, right? Because they're going to get burnt out. So you really need to think of ways that you can incorporate into your company to keep people focused in a way that is as least stressed as possible with everything going on. And it's not just about pay or bonuses or anything like that, because they could go to other boats right now and get the same thing, because infrastructure bill and all this stuff, all companies are going to have money to pay that.
Right.
It's about saying to that engineer, here's what your career path might look like here. Here's how we're going to help you get there. We're bringing in more people that are going to be able to work with you so you don't have to work as many hours. We're working on our recruiting programs, etc. You have to think about all that stuff, because what I tell people, like a simple like proverb is, if you're too busy to fill up the car with gas, eventually you're going to run out. And that's what's going to happen in these companies, because it's kind of like foot on the gas, 100%. Everybody keep working, more work's coming in, but eventually you're going to run out of gas. They're going to run out of gas, and you're going to be passing on millions of dollars of work, quite frankly, because you can't do it.
Right. And probably losing clients in addition to losing some of those top performers that you're overworking.
Exactly.
So you had mentioned again in the information on the Engineering Management Institute.org. Right. Okay. You had mentioned in there on the write-up that when you told people what you were going to do, that they laughed at you and said, engineers don't want to learn, which of course, one of the primary reasons I work with engineers is because engineers do want to learn and want to be right, and they're smart people. And you said that that people were naysayers, but you've got 3 million downloads and a Forbes citation to prove otherwise, right? Say something about that, because I couldn't find it real quickly when I looked for it.
Yeah, so basically when I left my engineering career and I kind of said, I'm going to go out on my own and try to focus more on helping engineers to be successful by building some of their soft skills that they don't learn. I think a lot of people didn't think you could build a company around that, number one, because at the time it was companies didn't understand the importance of these skills as much as they're starting to understand it now as projects are getting more complex.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I said one of the first things I'm going to do is start a podcast to help them with these skill sets in their careers, a lot of people told me that engineers are too busy. They're not going to listen to a podcast like that. right? For whatever reason, maybe they thought they're buried in their technical projects. They didn't want to take time to learn about their careers and career growth and soft skills. But, I just felt that from my own experience and I had started doing some talks and some associations, and the feedback that I was getting was that there was a lot of interest in these skill sets, and that engineers did want access to this, and they hadn't had it up to that time. And so I kind of went off with my gut and my own experience and my own feelings, is that we need to push through with this. And maybe we're not going to make a lot of money in the beginning. We're doing podcasting, we're doing some one-on-one coaching here and there, but it was something that I wanted to do, and we did it. And eventually over time it grew, and we got more and more listens to the podcast. We started more niche podcasts focused on civil engineering, structural, geotechnical, and all of the channels continue to grow. So I think it's a message to engineering companies that their people do want to learn about soft skills. They do want to become better people leaders. If they're given the opportunity, they will take advantage of it, and you need to work with them on that.
Okay, and I'm glad to hear that, both in your experience and mine, that people are waking up to the need for, I hate the term soft skills. There's a quote I found from a woman, I believe she was from England, I can't remember her name, and she said, hard skills get you hired, soft skills get you fired.
Well, I also heard soft skills are hard to build, which is true. And I like to use people skills a lot, is what I use, because really, there's 3 skills in my opinion for engineers: the technical skills, the project management skills, the scope, schedule, budget of your projects, and the people management skills, the communication, delegation, things of that nature. And I kind of refer to them as those 3. If you can have a good balance of those 3, then you're in really good shape.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the questions that came up for me as I was thinking about our conversation today is, you've been doing this for over 10 years now on your own, but you were involved in it before. What skills were important 10 years ago that may have waned? There's not as much emphasis put on those now. And what skills are more needed in today's environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. And first of all, I'll just say that I think communication skills were needed and are needed always. I think that's a running theme that we always need to focus on. I think what's maybe changed in a big way is, like, back then, like in terms of being productive, there wasn't as many distractions. Okay. Meaning like phones and social media and remote work and all types of things like that. Whereas you could sit in your office, you could open up a set of plans and specs and read through them for a couple of hours and not have anybody bother you. Okay. That's not the case anymore. Okay. So one of the things that I'm focused on personally, I'm focused on with our team at EMI, and I'm focused in our content and learning development programs, is teaching people how to be as productive as possible.
Okay.
And productivity to me means the ability to focus on the most impactful tasks for you and your company.
Okay.
And that means that you need to, number one, identify what those tasks are. And I like to use something called the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, that I'm a huge fan of, to help people do that. But then secondly, you have to then structure your work week, your schedule, your calendar to be able to focus on those tasks without interruption, which is very, very difficult to do. I'm a big fan of Cal Newport, the author of Deep Work. He also wrote a book that I read recently called A World Without Email, which is excellent. And what he says in this book is that what we've cultivated over the years now is we've cultivated an addiction to these constant interactions of text messages and social media posts and emails, and we're just programmed to answer these things. And the problem is we don't prioritize them. If someone emails us, we just jump in and answer it, even if we're trying to write a book or trying to write a report or trying to do something. Instead, all these types of asynchronous communications, like the MS Teams and Slack, right? Our teams are messaging us all the time. We need to do a better job at answering those things at one time and then doing our work, as opposed to blending everything together. And the professionals that will be able to do that going forward, in my opinion, are the professionals that are going to be the most successful, because they're going to be able to do deep work, they're going to be able to do quality work, and they're not going to let everybody else run their days.
And I'm 100% with you on that. And the challenge that I see from the folks that I coach is that mentality of, oh my gosh, it's a client call. Oh, I gotta return this call right away. No, I don't care if the house is burning down, honey. I gotta return this call, because that's that mindset. And I read an article, it's been several years ago, talking about the technology, the games, and playing on our phones and having to be on our phones all the time. And this is actually the equivalent to an opioid addiction, that it creates the same patterns in our brains that they see from drug users, that you got to go get it, you got to go get it. And that simply isn't true. You can turn your phone over so you at least can't see what's coming up on the screen.
Yeah.
So one of the areas that I've encountered and had a lot of conversations with the clients on is critical thinking. And I don't know if they teach critical thinking in engineering courses. My undergrad is communication and my master's education in human development. So I don't think critical thinking was scattered in there anywhere, but it was certainly expected at the master's level. Do you see, first off, a growing need for critical thinking because are the jobs getting more complex? And what do you recommend when you run into somebody who says, this person just can't get through it?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's becoming more and more important, because I think work is becoming more complex. I mean, projects are becoming more complex. We've never had engineering projects the size of the engineering projects that we have now. We've never had a $1 trillion infrastructure bill before, which is coming through now, right? So your ability to think critically is important. And I think, going back to what you said before, in terms of your mindset around responsiveness and client interaction, a lot of times we set that expectation. So if my client emails me and I get back to them immediately, or I get back to them in 2 hours, they probably don't care about the difference between an hour or two. It's us that's saying, I got to get back to them right away. So in order for us to develop better critical thinking skills and give ourselves more time to do deep thinking, which I think is very important, you need to be able to be more disciplined in your approach to your work days, and more disciplined to make sure that you're doing critical thinking. And I know a lot of your clients that you work with, Pam, are CEOs and executives, and they need to be doing critical thinking and visionary thinking of what's ahead for them. Because if they're not making time to do that on their calendar every week, other companies are, and their company is going to fall behind. So I do think it's important. And I don't think that, while it wasn't taught in engineering school, I believe that engineers are good critical thinkers. I just think they need to create the space for them to do it.
Okay, good. So a quote that I've heard from some of the younger engineers that I work with, because I come in at the CEO level, and that's my primary client, and then go to the next gen, which is some of the folks you're talking about, the people who want to move up. I have one client who said to me one day, and he's the next gen. Okay, so he's moving on up. I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to be in so-and-so's position. That's just not me. How do you respond if somebody says that to you?
Listen, there are roles in companies for people that want to lead, and there are roles for people that want to be on the team and that want to contribute in a specialized way, whether it's a technical expertise or whatever their expertise may be. And I think that's perfectly fine. And I think the job of the leadership of a company is to identify whose passion is what, whose strengths are what, and put people in the right seats. And what I would say to that person is, if you want to remain a team player, if you want to stay on a technical track, not a managerial track, I think that that's great. You just have to make sure that you communicate that with your supervisor that they're on the same page with you and you have an avenue or a path to go down that you can in your company, right? Because
Right.
I think where people get into trouble with that mentality is their company's not aware of it. Their company's expecting them to go onto a project manager or a management track of some sort, and they have no interest in doing that. And that's when you start to have problems.
Exactly. And my response was similar with this client. I said, you can be a leader. You don't have to be the leader.
Hmm.
You could be a leader of a team, which is certainly hard work. You can, be a leader in smaller roles, less encompassing roles, where people are still looking to you. They're going to look to you anyway because of who you are and the position you're in. So you may not want to be a leader, but that's kind of what your younger cohorts are expecting of you. So he got comfortable with that. But that was part of the challenge. And you mentioned the, sorry, I'm just trying to check my phone, which of course has decided to take a hike. You mentioned the technical path versus the professional path. Again, is this something that the engineering schools are starting to address this with the folks they have coming through their programs? Or again, does this fall on the leader of the company to establish these two different paths? How common is an understanding that there are more than one path?
Yeah, so really in most engineering careers, you're going to get to this proverbial fork in the road, and it's going to be technical and it's going to be management. All right.
Right.
And I know Yogi Berra once said, if there's a fork in the road, take it, but it doesn't work in this scenario. You kind of have to pick one or the other. So
You do have to pick one.
in terms of schooling, schools don't address this because they don't have enough time to address it. They only have enough time to teach you the technical, there's a certain level of technical education that they need to teach you to be an ABET accredited school, and they just don't have the time to do anything outside of the technical realm. So an undergraduate engineering degree, their job is really to get you the technical education so that you could take your FE exam and get on the path to licensure. And it's not really their fault in a sense, because the way the guidelines are set up right now, they don't have time to get anything else in there. Now, there are some programs like Masters of Engineering Management programs that are out there now that can help engineers to start to learn some engineering related management concepts, which could be very beneficial for someone looking to go down the management track. But again, to me, it falls back on the company. The company needs to have a clear career roadmap for people so they can see what their options and pathways are. And then they need to have the learning and development programs that support the different pathways. So if you say, I want to just remain as a technical professional, that's great. We have resources where you can get technical training for your technical expertise and build and maintain your license and get those credits that you need. If someone says, I want to go on the project management path, that's fine. We have a project management training program that we can put you through that can put you on that path and help you do what you want to do in terms of project management. So I think that the engineering schools are limited in what they can do outside of the technical track. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with staying on the technical track, but I think that companies need to educate their employees on the different tracks and what programs they have to support whichever pathway they decide to choose.
Okay. So as I think about the things that we've talked about here and the experiences that you have out there representing Engineering Management Institute and the outreach you provide to so many engineers at so many levels, what's a burning topic for you if we haven't addressed it already? What are the things that are going to keep, I hate this expression, keep the CEOs and leaders up at night when they think about, gee, what do I need to be doing to keep my engineers?
I think that we've talked about it already, but it really is the learning and development programs, because I've recently surveyed over 700 engineers on LinkedIn, and I asked them what was the most important thing that their company provides to them. Bonus and salary, health benefits and other benefit programs, a couple other options, and basically career growth opportunities. And 70%, I believe, over 70% answered career growth opportunities.
Wow.
So if you're a CEO, what's going to be keeping me up at night is that if other companies are offering more clearer career pathways and learning and development programs than you, your people are going to go work there. Also, people aren't going to come and work for you. So you're going to lose on getting people on the boat, and you're going to have people jumping off the boat, and you're going to be in trouble. So I know that, like, I tend to talk a lot about learning and development because it's what we do, but what people don't realize is that it is fundamental to what engineers want. So if you want to build a great company, you've got to meet the needs of your people that work there. And if they want, above everything else, career growth opportunities, you need to somehow be able to put that in place. Now, the other thing that I'll say in addition to that I think everyone needs to be aware of, especially with everything we've gone through with COVID and remote working, is work-life balance.
Yeah.
I think when people used to go to the office every day, the cell phone has already blurred the lines between work-life balance, because when people would go home at night and people would still contact them on their phones and whatnot.
Right.
But now we've completely blurred the lines because people don't even go to work. They're working at home. So now work is at home are just completely integrated. So that being said, I think that companies and individuals need to take care of themselves with regards to work-life balance. They need to stay in shape physically and mentally. And companies need to preach that as well, because you're just going to get burnt out if you don't. The quality of your work is going to decrease, and you're not going to have happy employees. And so at EMI, we're always stressing to people that we want to help them to try to be as low stressed as possible. We're always trying to put things in place to create low stress situations for people. And I think that's something that companies need to think about, because you can only push people to the limit so far before things start breaking.
We need more ways to learn and grow. And I think in the examples of the customers who are calling and people are dropping everything to reply to the customers, I've watched that happen over the last however many years it's been since we had these cell phones. And you've got to manage yourself, because I do a lot of work with emotional intelligence. And that really starts out with, you have to be able to manage yourself. If you can't manage yourself, you can't manage other people. And not everybody has learned to do that. Matter of fact, most people haven't learned to do that. And it's another set of skills that folks who want to move forward really should focus on, is their own intrapersonal development. So this has been really helpful. I really appreciate you sharing your insights and tales about what goes on out there in the engineering world. Is there anything specific that you would add from the viewpoint of being a CEO yourself? So I talk to CEOs. Leaders Finish Strong is geared to CEOs. As a CEO, is there something else, another point you want to make, or you want to emphasize one of those points again?
No, I mean, I guess one other point I'll make that I think is important is, your company's culture is everything that you have. And,
Absolutely.
I think it was Peter Drucker who said, culture eats strategy for lunch, because it's just so much, like, we can think about the strategy and how quick we're going to grow and how many firms we're going to acquire and all that stuff. Great. But you have to remember, when you're growing fast like that, you're putting a lot of pressure on your people to keep up with it. And so you have to really make sure that you're taking care of your people, that you're focusing on them growing year over year, and you're giving them the ability to learn and develop. And you have to make sure that you're helping them to be successful, going back to what we talked about with their career growth and development. Because if you're not doing that, then you're just a place to work, and they could find another place to work. You don't want to just be any place to work. You want to be a place where they want to come every day. They like the people there. They like the culture there. They like interacting with people. They like the fact that there is no fog. They can see where they're headed. There's people supporting them. And if I'm a CEO of a company, I'm spending a large portion of my time on building the right culture and making sure that we're supporting people in their careers. And if you do that, I think you'll be very successful. One of the things that we do here at EMI every year, or more frequently than every year, is I talk to everyone here and I ask them what their personal goals are and how can we help them achieve those.
Terrific.
Because, I think the idea is that a company is here, a company makes money, and then the company figures out how to reallocate that money. And my take on it is, if the people who work in a company are kind of working hard to try to grow the company, shouldn't the company try to help them grow personally and achieve their own goals, right? It should be like a two-way street. And so,
Yes.
and I find that when you take that approach, people do want to work even harder for your company because they realize that working for the company is driving them towards their own goals. And so I think that that's something that I would really focus on as a CEO. I think that that's critically important.
Okay, great. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking time to sit down and have the conversation today. And I have no doubt that what you have said, your words of wisdom to both CEOs as well as to the next gen people who are moving up, will ring true with our audience. So what's the best way for people to learn about the Engineering Management Institute? Where do you want to have them go?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me pretty easily. I put a lot of stuff out there around what Pam and I just talked about in terms of development and growth and programs. And then you can go to our website at engineeringmanagementinstitute.org. But I would say LinkedIn is where we're putting out a lot of our programs, our information, our free content, all the podcasts that we have. Please feel free to connect with me there. And I'd love to be able to help you in any way that we can, even if it's just by reading our content.
Yes, and you do have great content, even the stuff that people I know have written,
Thank you,
Pam. So I'm going to encourage everybody to also go to MentorLoft.com, which is my primary website. It's full of resources for CEOs and the next gen who are trying to grow in their career. And of course, check out leadersfinishstrong.com, which has ideas for CEOs to use to grow themselves and their firms. Thanks again for joining us, Anthony. Have a good holiday week, and we'll see you later. And to our audience, you can find more interviews in this series on leadersfinishstrong.com. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.